In an era of constant information and rapid exchange, what are the most significant unseen challenges we face in making our complex ideas truly clear and compelling to others? Beyond the literal content of our message, how do elements like our delivery and personal presence shape how our communication is perceived and acted upon? If we were to pause and genuinely focus on the other person's perspective before articulating our own, what transformative impact could that have on our ability to connect and influence? Stay with us as we explore these crucial questions and more in our conversation on clear and compelling communication.
Welcome to Space to Lead, the podcast where leaders and teams come together to learn, grow, and thrive. Each episode brings fresh insights and real conversations with leaders and industry experts who are shaping the future of leadership. We explore strategies to build dynamic, engaging cultures, whether you're leading from the front or making an impact within your team. So take a deep breath, make some space, and let's lead together.
Welcome to Space to Lead. Today we're honored to have Salvatore Manzi, a distinguished communication coach, joining us. Salvatore helps leaders and their teams enhance their communication strategies to foster inclusive, high-performing cultures. We're particularly excited to discuss his upcoming book, Clear and Compelling: Communication Strategies for Big Thinkers and Bold Ideas. In this conversation, Salvatore will delve into his approach to communication, which he breaks down into three core pillars: content, delivery, and presence. Salvatore, it is so good to have you on the show today.
It's wonderful to be here on Space to Lead. Thank you.
My pleasure. So I've been really looking forward to this conversation. I've gotten to know a little bit about you and your upcoming book, Clear and Compelling: Communication Strategies for Big Thinkers and Bold Ideas. And I'd really love to learn a little bit more about you and what got you to this space of writing Clear and Compelling.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. And happy to be here. Honored to join the esteemed list of guests that you've had. My name is Salvatore Manzi. I'm a communication coach, and I help leaders and their teams elevate their communication using communication strategies that I've created over the last 20 years. And with those strategies, they can create a more inclusive, high-performing culture. To break it down a little bit, in my book, I break down the art of communication into three pillars: content, delivery, and presence. In the content, we need to organize our content in a way that makes sense. And so I studied cognitive psychology, neuroscience of what frameworks would help to put content in a meaningful way. In delivery, what are the techniques that we can use to create a incongruent and embodied presence while we are communicating the message? And in presence, that is the whole assortment of beliefs, experiences, the conditioning that we have gone through that enables us to either show up or not show up with the presence necessary to get our communication to land and move people to action.
Beautiful, beautiful. And I find the first question that's coming up for me as I hear you talk, content, delivery, presence, is this a linear model or framework, or where does one start?
As an analytical person, you're already like juicing me up here. Okay, now we're going to dive into this. I am an introvert, analytical, and this book is designed for data-driven tech leaders who have to communicate complexity and make it clear for the non-data mind. And the book is not meant to be a linear process. It's actually a playbook. Pull a chapter, play with it, keep working. The idea is try a framework. This is how you would navigate a question and answer period. Try that framework. Add on a delivery technique. This is how you can use your eyes to be more engaging in a meeting. Do that with your Q&A framework. See how it goes. And then reflect from a presence. Were you exuding the presence that you want? Did you get feedback that you landed the way you wanted? So it's using all three pillars, but just one thing at a time from each one until it becomes fluid for you.
I love that. I often, and probably your experience as well, work with leaders who they try and do too much at once and then don't do anything successfully. So this idea of starting small, focusing on one thing really resonates.
Yeah, it's very important to your point. It's easy to get overwhelmed with all the little things. And this is what happens when I don't know if anybody is listening has had this. You get up to give a presentation and all of a sudden everything just shuts down. And it's because we're trying to do all the things that we've been taught are the best practices around giving that presentation and remember our content and remember the people in the room. And it just creates a shutdown for us.
Hmm. So we've got, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes to have a bit of a chat and, would like to dig in a little bit deeper into elements of clear and compelling. So where does one start?
Where does one start? It is very unique to each person to find out where is the area of growth that you want to have. And I want to kind of tie this in with your work with the space model, that idea of how to create space in your work life, in your life, and in your presentations. And like just tipping off the first one of stillness. Stillness is important in the presence aspect of your communication. How you are perceived has a lot to do with the speed at which you are presenting. The more stillness you can convey, the more composure you appear to have, the more confidence you appear to have, the more presence you appear to have. But you can't have that if you haven't practiced stillness outside of that engagement.
Mm. I have to say that that one particular element really jumped out at me as I was looking at some of your materials, looking at your website and whatnot. And it took me right back to when I did my master's degree, because part of the program, the pre-work, we had to submit values and do a whole bunch of work. And one of my values was stillness. And so it really connected with me when I saw that in your materials. And gosh, one of the more challenging ones to put into practice, quite frankly, at least for me, because we have all this external noise and pressure on us. So I'd love to go a little bit deeper. As you work with your clients, how do you help them to cultivate and develop that stillness that you're describing?
I love this question, and I think it's something that everybody can work on. I don't think that presence is something that we're born with. It's something that we develop as a skill. And I would offer two techniques. Number one, just imagine moving 5% slower than the rest of the room. So make that your goal. That's the one thing you want to do in the next meeting you're in. Move 5% slower than everybody else. Notice what that does to your physiology. Notice what that does to your internal loops. And notice how it makes you feel. That will help you create that sense of stillness in yourself. The other part of it, from a communication side, I work with people on the pause. Of course, the pause. It's like the most dreaded aspect, but the most powerful technique in communication. When I first started out, I couldn't hold a pause for more than 2 seconds. I just couldn't. I was like, it's awkward. My coach got me up to 3 and then to 5 and then up to 10 seconds. And holding that stillness for 10 seconds is difficult, but it's commanding. But you can't do any of that if you haven't learned stillness on your own. So to your work and what you're coaching your clients around, being able to embody that stillness outside of the actual arena is important. What are some ways that you inspire people to instill stillness into their life?
Very similar. The pause is an important piece. It reminded me one of the first episodes I recorded was with Shoko Masuda. Um, Japanese, lovely lady. I just love Shoko. And she talks about this idea of pause and stillness as well, and culturally, how it's so different in North America, how those 2 seconds of silence that you described are so uncomfortable for people. In my working with clients, I often talk about this idea of this addictive loop
Mm-hmm.
and these patterns of thought, patterns of behavior that are so ingrained we don't even realize that they are happening. And we're just sort of reflexive in our responses, how quick we speak, how we react to things. So I really challenge them to think of a way, either internally or externally, that they can interrupt that loop
Yes.
so that they can intentionally choose how to move forward. And sometimes we get really creative with it. So I've had clients who will actually put something on their desk that's meaningful to them as a visual reminder that they're going to pause and think about how they're going to proceed, which can be a really great way of sort of rewiring those pathways.
Yeah, I love that. And having something to stop you and create that pause is essential. Viktor Frankl's quote, you're probably familiar, in between stimulus and response, there is a gap. And in that gap, we have an opportunity to choose which way we want to go. And training ourselves to spot that gap, to live in that gap, to notice where the automatic loop happens and drives us to the next thing. That's where we gain power. And in that power, we can instill stillness, take a moment to reflect, and then give a better response or no response at all. So powerful. I love the visual thing. The other thing I would offer to anyone listening, if you've ever been told that you use too many filler words, like, it's like, bottom line, first of all, it's natural. We don't want talking robots. We want to hear a little bit of that. The goal as a communicator is to mirror your audience. If I'm talking to a group of high school students, like I'm totally going to be using language that's more appropriate. If I'm talking to the board or I'm talking to reporters, I need to be clear and intentional. The only way I can get that clear and intentional with my language is if I have mastered that stillness between the stimulus and response. And within that stillness, I learn to pause, hold that pause, and then respond.
I love that. And it's funny that you talk about those repetitive words. I know probably our listeners have varying degrees of relationship with AI.
Mm,
Personally, I use it and I've turned on in Teams the AI coach.
okay.
And the very first time I looked at the report, it told me that in a 1 hour meeting, I said sort of 54 times.
54 times.
I was sitting embarrassed all by myself
Shame
at my desk.
spiral.
Yeah.
Ah.
And it was such an interesting thing to your point around language and whisker words and all those kind of things, using a tool like that to help us identify. Because again, some of these patterns are so deeply ingrained we can't hear it.
You don't hear it.
But trust me, once it's pointed out,
You can't not hear it.
Barry Oshry, once you see something, you can't unsee it.
Mhm.
So it's been a really powerful tool to help with that. You bring an interesting piece in because there's two things that you just said. And gosh, timing is everything because I just had a coaching client this morning where we talked about power and language.
Mm.
And our choice of words really determine our presence, which I haven't read the book, but I suggest you talk about that. So I'd love to hear a little bit more from you around this idea of language and power.
Language and power. Our goal is to be mindful of our audience as we're communicating. There are two ways to communicate. One is that I just do a download. The other is that I have a dialogue, and we want to have a dialogue, not a download when we communicate, whether it's one to one or one to many. If I'm in a meeting and I want to present, my goal is principle number one. The principle number one in my book is you, then me. Before I get to me and my agenda, my idea, my response, I need to talk about you, your offering, your comments, your perspective, your hopes, your fears, your whatever it is. If I can take just a second, maybe a minute at the top of when I open my mouth and begin conversing, if I take just a minute or a sentence to reflect to you what I heard you say and acknowledge what I understand your perspective to be before pivoting to my response and my agenda, it's going to create a communication flow. It's going to deepen rapport. It's going to enable us to have a more collaborative conversation. So the power of words is important. The order of words is also start with you, then me, and you're sure to create a more positive exchange with your collaborators.
Yeah. And that approach of start with you, then me ties beautifully to where you started the conversation when you were talking about the power of the pause, in that by me shifting the focus to you, and in my practice, usually with the question, so being a little bit curious, Salvatore, tell me more, that actually gives me the pause to kind of reorganize my thoughts and think about the language I'm going to use, my presence, so that I can really step into that conversation in a powerful way. So it's a two benefits from the you then me approach.
I love that. And to your point, the you then me might start with a question so that you gather more information. And the you then me might start with me making assumptions. Well, I imagine that you've been feeling, or you may be wondering, like, and then we get clarity, and then everything else becomes easier. I mean, part of that, and you're kind of leaning into it, is the art of listening, right? Principle number 6 is you've got to have active listening. You've got to develop the ability to listen because it's challenging. Most people talk at an average rate of 125 words a minute, but your brain can process 400 words a minute. That's quite a gap. And in that gap, we're making lists, we're coming up with a response, we're coming up with all that, right? Or we're thinking about what we're going to do after this conversation ends. Like it's hard to stay focused. And if you are a people leader out there, one of the things I would offer is it's far better when somebody comes up and asks to talk to you. It's far better for you to say, give me 15 minutes and then we can, versus half listening while they try, because you're not able to do both when you can be fully present. It's kind of like if you're dancing with a partner, right? If I'm dancing with a partner and not paying attention to their steps, I'm stepping all over them. I'm just watching my steps. That's what active listening is. It's watching the other person's dance moves so that we have a nice flow in the conversation.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's a great visual. I'm kind of smiling. Of course, folks can't see this. It's a podcast. I'm smiling. It's funny because at the beginning, you talked about this idea of content delivery, presence, picking one from each and focusing on that. However, in the course of just 15 minutes, we gave a lot more than just 3 approaches and things to use because it is nuanced. And as you shared, it's different for everyone. We're all starting from a different place. So I guess we're going to have to wait for the book to get all the details, and I'm certainly looking forward to reading that. If you had to distill the essence of clear and compelling, what is one key idea that you might share with our listeners to kind of get started in this path of clear and compelling communication?
Well, I've already shared the principle number 1, which is a driving factor for the book, really. The second thing I would offer to anybody out there, and I didn't call this out specifically in the book, but do know that spot it, got it. In the sense that if you spot somebody doing something very artful, very articulate, and communicating or having presence in a way that you find compelling, if you're able to spot it, then you've got it. It just takes a little courage and trial and error to get there on your own. So to your point, pick one thing, get good at it, try it in different contexts. And it starts with feedback, right? Either watch yourself on video with a less critical eye or find a trusted colleague who can offer you more than you did great, that can tell you, hey, you could do a little more of this or a little less of that. Or work with someone like David or I who can coach you on the way that you're presenting yourself that you might not be aware of. And that'll help you target in and refine. And if you spot it, you got it. And if you start with you, then me, you're solid.
Beautiful, beautiful. And if I was to condense that down even further, because we talked about earlier these leaders who try and do everything all at once and then aren't successful, paring it down to 1 or 2 things I love, or even a great starting point even before that is take the next 30 days and do exactly what you just described and spot it. Just notice, pay attention to habits, pay attention to things you observe in others that you like, and just use 30 days to notice and observe, collect intel, and then from there, think about what might be the next first step.
I love it. That's the P, perspective, right? And then we go to analysis for the next step.
Yeah.
What you did there, you're taking me through space. Space to lead. This is excellent.
I think there's a lot of parallels in the work that we do, Salvatore. Thank you so much for creating this space for this conversation. In many ways, we really just hit the tip of the iceberg. I'm looking forward to continuing the conversation once your book is published and learning a little bit more about the impact that it's having on not only your clients, but folks out there, listeners as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me with you.
We covered a lot of ground today on clear and compelling communication strategies. To recap, Salvatore shared his expertise as a communication coach, emphasizing how his strategies help leaders and their teams foster inclusive, high-performing cultures. He introduced his upcoming book, Clear and Compelling: Communication Strategies for Big Thinkers and Bold Ideas, which breaks down the art of communication into 3 essential pillars: content, delivery, and presence. Salvatore clarified that his book is designed as a playbook for data-driven tech leaders who need to communicate complexity, stressing that it's not a linear process, but an iterative guide for practice and reflection. A significant part of our discussion focused on the power of stillness within the presence pillar. Salvatore highlighted that stillness is crucial for conveying composure, confidence, and presence, and offered practical techniques such as moving 5% slower than others and mastering the pause in communication, which, despite initial comfort, can be incredibly commanding. We also explored how interrupting ingrained patterns of thought and behavior, often with a visual reminder, can create a crucial gap for intentional response rather than reflexive reaction. We delved into Salvatore's foundational principle, you, then me, which encourages communicators to acknowledge the audience perspectives, hopes, and fears before presenting their own agenda. This approach deepens rapport and facilitates collaborative dialogue, often benefiting from the pause to gather thoughts or ask questions. This also ties into the importance of active listening, which helps prevent stepping all over the other person's conversational dance moves. Finally, Salvatore left us with an empowering thought: if you've spot it, you've got it. This philosophy suggests that the ability to recognize compelling communication in others is the first step to embodying it yourself. He encouraged listeners to observe, collect intel, and start by refining just one aspect of their communication. We've only scratched the surface today, and we eagerly await the publication of his book to delve deeper into these powerful strategies. If you'd like to learn more about Salvatore's work, you can connect with him via LinkedIn or at www.salvatoremanzi.com. And his book's available for pre-order now and on the shelves in October. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Space to Lead. Please take a moment to follow us on your favorite podcast provider so you don't miss an episode.